just a hearty welcome. We've got a lot to talk about, so just know how, I don't know. I mean, I go to a lot of Zoom meetings. I have a lot of stuff like this, but to be able to be in a virtual room with people who really know that whatever your particular politics are, whatever your particular views are on the issues of the day, that the larger issue is we want students in our state to have all the tools necessary to be responsible citizens and to really understand that this republic, it's a pretty amazing place and it comes with some huge responsibilities. So we are really happy to have all of you here. So Judy, you want to talk about some policy updates and things that are going on?
Sure. And at some point, I know that Representative Dan Johnson is planning on joining us when he can. You know, he's obviously very busy. But for right now, I can kind of give an update on where we are. Boy, you know, we've so far, I think overall, and certainly compared to our counterparts in other states, civics education is doing well on the Hill. Thanks to a lot of you, to Doug, to Alicia, to Stefan, who have come to testify and help us out, really explain what we're talking about with innovation. We're really well poised this year to pass HB 273, which is the main civics education amendments legislation sponsored by Representative Johnson, sets up local innovations. It provides grant funding to school districts and schools to do something innovative in civics education. Could be around teaching the Constitution, could be about media literacy, digital citizenship, Michelle and I've just talked about. And it could be academic service learning, you know, where kids kind of get their hands dirty and learn by doing. Any of those categories or others could be part of that. We got through a very challenging committee yesterday, the Senate Education Standing. And so we just have to go through one more big hurdle, which is the full Senate. And then we have to remain a high priority in the appropriations, the money process. I think we are still ranked number 5 for funding. So that's quite good. And I think Representative Johnson feels quite confident. He and I, you know, talk almost every day, and he's really sounding very hopeful. Now, any of you here can continue. A lot of you have spoken so eloquently for this legislation. Thank you. But I'm going to also provide in the chat some tools that you might be able to use to help us bring this stuff over the top. Okay, those links did not work, so hold on a second.
So I think I fixed the agenda, just so you know, in the chat, the permissions.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to read. Judy, I think you have to mute me, or anyway, I was getting some feedback. Anyway, I just want to thank you for all of your work on 273. You know, it's been a real labor of love for Representative Johnson, and the idea of taking this pilot and then seeing what might happen with some real innovative approaches looks really exciting, because from our listening tour conversations, the ideas that are being generated from classroom teachers are really inspiring. Some of the things that they might be able to do. So I'm excited about that.
So that's another tool. If you're able to access the agenda, you can see that we've been keeping track of all the different ideas for innovation that we've been gathering from teachers on our listening tours mainly. You can always add to those ideas, just get in touch with me or Robert, and we'd always like to hear more. But we're in a really good position on that piece of legislation. So thank you, and let's keep our eye on the ball, as you know, we used to say in soccer practice. Okay. And why don't I turn it over to Alicia?
Judy, I have a quick question, if you have time for it, about so saying that this passes the legislature, how some school districts are better at pursuing this kind of funding? Are we going to have, what's the process that to make it available to as many people and encourage them to apply and have innovative ideas?
That's a fantastic question. And I think what it's going to take is, and Doug even brought this up in his blog post from today, we really are going to get out there again. Luckily, we're making a lot of really great connections in local school districts and schools on the listening tours, but we're going to be wanting to double back with all of those folks and really encourage them. You know, in the listening tours, we've had teachers suggest something that they've tried that seems really cool that they'd like to take to scale. So we're going to be going back even to those teachers and saying, hey, you know, why don't you work with your social studies leader at the school district and work with your principal and really develop this. So, you know, yeah, we're going to have to really prime that pump. I think one of the things that we're going to want to do is to put on a big forum for school district social studies leaders and teachers that are interested in civics, is kind of put on a forum and really give people a big green light and give them some ideas and really embolden them to go with their ideas. So that's a great question.
And
any other questions?
Well, I would just say that there's a role, I think, for this collaborative to play in that, to make sure that that process is, we get the word out to as many people as possible. The other challenge, of course, is going to be making those hard decisions, because there's only going to be a certain amount of, if let's just say this happens, we actually get an appropriation, there's only going to be a certain amount of money. And so then we're going to need to ask some of you to serve to help make those tough calls, because I don't want to be the bad guy. Okay. So I'll need some help on that regard.
Yeah. So, you know, we'll be coming back, but I mean, we see this as really a UCLC undertaking in every sense. And so we're going to want to all roll up our sleeves together on that one, but it's an exciting opportunity. So any other questions about House Bill 273? Let's go on. Alicia, if you want to go over what's going on with SJR 6.
Sure.
And Alicia, do you mind introducing yourself?
Sure.
As you do.
I am the director of the Utah 3 R's project. We teach citizenship through the lens of the 3 R's framework of rights, responsibility, and respect. And it's drawn from the religion clauses of the First Amendment in the Constitution. So we came before the House Committee, or the House Education Committee yesterday, and it passed the committee. There was a person who testified during public comment that cast doubt on the trustworthiness of the project. She's a teacher in Salt Lake School District that attended a training that talked about the 2015 Fairness for All initiative and the civil dialogue lead up to that. And the Fairness for All initiative passed a legislature that had religious freedom protections for those who oppose same-sex marriage, and then also strengthened protections for LGBTQ people in housing and employment. So in her testimony, she said that she attended this training and that she found it to be critical of the LDS Church and promoting same-sex relationships, and that just wasn't true. And it was this mischaracterization of what the civil dialogue among the examples were. And so I'm hoping that that was just her testimony and that there's not much influence of it, but it concerned me to hear somebody talking about the project that way, but we're optimistic that it passed the committee and it's going to come to the House floor soon.
Okay. Alicia, you have a question from Michelle Linford. Michelle, go ahead.
Wondering if there's anyone we can contact to express support given what you experienced.
That's a good question. We're there could be members of the committee, or if you're connected with any representatives that when it comes to the House floor that they, because I think a lot of it was just that a lot of the committee members just didn't know much about the project, and then this one person's brings up questions about it and they just didn't know a lot about it. So if you're connected with any particular representatives that we could talk to them and just introduce them to the work of the project so they feel confident that it's something that that and the Utah State Board of Education endorsed the resolution, and which is about the 3 R's framework. So if you are close to any representatives and that we could, talk to them and help them understand the work of the project so they feel comfortable with it, then that would be really helpful.
I could do that with Representative Stratton. And which committee was it?
It was the House Education Committee.
Okay.
So Alicia, the resolution passed the Senate, is that correct?
Yeah, so it passed the Senate Education Committee unanimously and the Senate unanimously, and then now it's been 6-3 in this House Education Committee.
Great.
Right.
So it's out onto the floor. So now, we hope it'll go to the floor. I mean, a lot of times at this point, it's just like getting calendar time to get on the agenda, because there's only 8 days left, something like that. So we'll cross our fingers.
Alicia, if you have any talking points or any tools for folks, you could put it into the matrix if you like, or
Okay.
give it to me and I'll circulate it. But thank you for your work on that. I think it's really a wonderful tool to raise awareness about this program and all of its benefits. Any other questions for Alicia? Okay, I have one question. So let's assume that it passes all the way through. And then what are you going to do with it? What happens next?
So the main purpose of the resolution, it talks about promoting using the 3 R's framework in schools for teachers. And so as we reach out to different teachers and offer our training, that it helps the administrators and the school districts to understand that there's support behind the project and to feel comfortable with it. So it's more of like an introduction and support.
It's like a letter of introduction. I love that.
Yeah.
It's very legit.
Little declaration.
You're
support.
legit. You're a legit person. It's cool. All right.
Love that. Okay, let's go on if we can. I think we have Dati Ullman with us, and we invited Dati here, who's been kind of a resident of student voice in the UCLC, to tell us about some legislation that she's working on, school district voter eligibility amendments. Dati, are you still there?
This is
I'll give her a minute.
This is when the Zoom becomes a seance, and you're like, "Can you hear us? Are you
Yes.
there?" Right. So,
Okay, I can text her. I can text her while we go on.
okay.
To some
Then
of
let's
the-
talk about. Do we have any updates on the appropriation request?
Yeah.
At UVU, do you want to?
UVU, do you want to go for? Well, let's hold on, because I think Scott is joining us. Unless Glory, you want to give us an update on what's going on with the. UVU?
I do not have an update,
Okay.
so I will happily defer to Scott if he's coming on. That'd be great.
This
Or
is Axel. Scott said he'd
Axel.
try and come into our meeting after 4 sometime and
Right.
update us, because he would know all the information.
Okay, so we can come back to that. How about Blanche? Do you want to tell us what's going on with your funding request and tell us what it's for?
Thank you. I would love to do that. I represent Freedom's Foundation at Valley Forge, actually the Utah chapter. We have made a request with the legislature for enough money to send 50 teachers to the graduate courses that are taught at Valley Forge during the summer.
Mhm.
And, it's based on all those concerns that we all have
Mhm.
about our students just simply not knowing what America is all about.
Mhm.
And we feel that it's critical for all teachers to get as much training as they can. For
Mhm.
us, this is simply a beginning. 50 doesn't sound like very many teachers, but 50 is more than 0.
Right.
So we don't know where our request is going to go. We're optimistic. It isn't a huge amount of money, but it would pay all of the expenses for 50 teachers to get that training at Valley Forge. It's really a being there experience.
Right.
And if
Right.
any of you have been in those historical sites, you know how your learning is expanded.
Yeah.
There's nothing like actually being on the site.
Right.
And the teachers that have experienced those courses write wonderful testimonials
Mhm.
about all that they have learned and the information that they bring back and are able to implement in their classrooms.
Mhm.
We think this training is important for all teachers, K through 12. And even though our secondary students do get much more training in civic education,
Mhm.
how about a science teacher taking
Exactly.
a couple of minutes
So
to
can you
weave
tell us?
something patriotic into their curriculum?
Yeah.
It can be done, and it is being done in marvelous ways, but not extensively.
Right. So tell us.
So
Can
we're
you tell
really
us?
hoping that teachers that will have the funds.
Yeah.
And we can start this year with 50 teachers. Maybe we can expand the numbers next year.
And how are you feeling about how it's being prioritized in the appropriations process? Do you need any help there?
Yes, we do need help, and I'd love to talk to you about that.
Okay.
I noticed an email pop up on my system from Cheryl Acton, Representative Cheryl Acton,
Yeah.
who is sponsoring our request.
Right.
And I'm sure it's an update. I haven't been able to make contact with her for several days. So I'm anxious to see, as soon as we're through with this meeting, what she is saying.
Great. Well, just keep us posted and let us know what we can do to help. If you have any talking points or anything like that, some of the documents that you dropped off at my house, I'd love to get those electronically so we can, share those all around. That would be
Yes.
great. Okay. All right.
And Judith, I need to do that. I apologize that I have
That's
not
okay.
done it sooner.
That's
I
okay.
sent you a few of them, and
Yeah, no, they're
I've
great.
been on
That's great
overload.
stuff. I just want everyone to get it. All right,
Good.
let's go on to another appropriation that we've been keeping our eye on. Stefan, would you like to share what's going on with the Hope Street Fellows appropriation?
Yeah. And actually, I wanted to piggyback on what Blanche had said. I've attended the Freedoms Foundation for years. So I've
Oh,
done the program
yay.
for years. I actually sent you an email not too long ago about an idea I had for if that request y'all have, if it goes through. Because if it goes through, I think there's a really cool event that y'all could host at the Freedoms Foundation itself. Because they have y'all been like, they've got that honor grove where every single state has their
Yes.
own grove. The Utah one needs updating.
Oh.
And I think that like, if this were to go through, that'd be a really cool selling point to show like every single state has their own little grove with their own obelisk honoring their Medal of Honor recipients. This money can help get those 50 teachers out there to hold a ceremony and update that site, because it needs to be updated. There's actually placards missing or that are wrong. So I sent you an email about not too long ago. But just as a reminder, it's hanging. Hopefully you got the email.
Jeff, and I need that reminder. I got that email when I had 20 others, and I'm
I assume
sorry.
so. Yeah. It was
So
just an idea. So if you can, I can resend the email to you. It was
would you
just an idea.
please?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That I thought would be worthwhile. If y'all were to get that request, it would look really cool to have that event held there at the place. That helps sell the idea of it and why it's so important, especially if you're going to try and continue to do this going forward.
Right. So Stefan,
I'll-
what about the other thing that you're working on?
So for us, I work with the Hope Street Group, Utah Teacher Fellows. I see Deborah here. It's actually Deborah's fault that I'm even a member of that organization. So thank you for that.
Welcome, Deborah. She's new.
So I'm now a staff member of this organization. So what we do is we go through a pretty rigorous application and interview process where we bring on 20 teachers who then are, for 2 years, we help them understand how public policy or education policy is done here in the state of Utah, and then how to positively and effectively engage with that process. And then we kind of let the teachers do what they wish with those skills that we give them over those 2 years. They're required to try and meet with policymakers at different levels, do research projects on behalf of the State Board of Ed, attend meetings at the Capitol, work with their legislators, whomever it is that they feel like they need to be working with to shape whatever kind of educational policy they would like to be involved in. So what I do is, as a staff member, is my job is to grow the program and to connect with other organizations like with UCLC and other groups, to try and help us become a larger entity in the state, because we are non-union and we're nonpartisan. We're just simply civically engaged teachers, and we help more teachers become that way, so that education policy is shaped by the educators. So we currently have an appropriation request to maintain our program. Representative Johnson is the one that's helping us run that. So we're just asking for not a whole lot of money, just basically enough for us to run the program continually for the next number of years. It's basically just our running costs is all, just for us to be able to give the teachers a small stipend, and we're talking small for the amount of time they put in, to be able to host events, those kinds of things. It got through the Education Appropriations Subcommittee with no issue. Like, nobody asked any questions about it. It was very fast. We presented it, we spoke to it for a moment, and then they said, cool, moving on.
All right.
But it went to the Executive Appropriations, and it's on the list of priorities for from the Education Subcommittee. They put it on their list of priorities to the Executive Appropriations Committee.
And is there any help that you're looking for to see this all the way through?
It's mostly just, it's like what everyone else is saying. It's mostly just letting the Executive Appropriation Committee members now understand who we are and why it's worth giving us money.
Okay.
And we're not asking for a whole lot. And when I look at the list of the things that are being asked of, ours is the smallest request
Okay.
on that list. That
How much are you asking for, Stephen?
we're asking for $100K, so just $100,000, because it really is. It's running costs. We're not talking, like, I'm not trying to give myself a bonus now that I'm on staff with this organization. It's really just in order that we can run the program, pay the teachers, be able to have a couple of in-person convenings at a hotel and conference room. We'll be at the Capitol this weekend on Friday, Saturday, and so it's things like that. So that's all it was, just $100,000. I was texting with Rep. Johnson last night, and he said he feels like we're in a good spot. He feels confident about it. So that's where we're at currently, is we're just hoping to get past that last step. We actually did get it the last time around. It's just with COVID, we got wiped out. We did make it, and then when they rebudgeted everything with COVID, we got kicked out and disappeared.
Yeah, that's what happened with the earlier iteration. That's what happened with the earlier iteration of Johnson's bill. Okay, so thank you so much, Stephen, and just share on that matrix, any tools that people can use to sing praises to your program.
Yeah,
I think Scott Paul did join us. Do I see Scott?
Yes.
Yes, Scott, would you like to say where we are with the UVU appropriation and what people might be able, if you want any help, you can ask for it here.
Okay. Well, thank you, Judy. I appreciate the opportunity. So, we've had our eye on a request for appropriation made by Representative Jefferson Burton for ongoing funding for his HB 327. It's the Civic Thought and Leadership Initiative. It's a bill that he put through last year. There's been a little confusion. It's actually a legislative request as opposed to a UVU request, and that's confused the legislators, and they're wondering why we're not grouped in with all the other UVU requests. It's because it's actually not a UVU request. Representative Burton, this is a program that he wanted to start it. He was familiar with UVU as an adjunct faculty there in the National Security Studies program, and then also knew, was aware of our center and how we were staunchly nonpartisan, and so identified us as the home for this program. So we're back this year after the first year, after a pretty solid first year with one-time funding, looking for ongoing funding, and it looks good. It was a little rocky going through the Higher Ed Appropriations Committee.
Great.
Higher Ed Appropriations is very they have limited resources for the Utah, the USHE, the Utah System of Higher Education Schools.
Right.
The original ask was for $3 million ongoing. We made it out of committee after some opposition from just some surprise opposition from a few representatives. a recommendation for 1.5 million in ongoing funding. It's now sits with the Executive Appropriations Committee. We're hearing good things. I think the best thing we're hearing, and I don't know if you probably mentioned already, is the budget numbers that came through last week, end of last week. Both one-time and ongoing funds exceeded significantly the projections,
Right.
the initial projections, and so that's making us hopeful that
Right.
we might
Everybody,
actually survive.
that's a big deal for all of us. That means they can go lower on the priority list. So that's excellent. Scott, is there anything that people can do to help with your quest for that fund?
Yeah, at this point, it's in the hands of the Executive Appropriations Committee and leadership.
Okay.
We're doing really well with House leadership, Senate leadership. I think we don't have quite the relationships there. So outreach to President Adams, Senate President Adams, and then to Jerry Stevenson, the Executive Appropriations Chair, and Brad Last, the Executive Appropriations House Chair. Those are the people who hold our fate in their hands.
All right. All right. Well, we'll do what we can to support that. We do have Dati with us, who is, I'll let you introduce yourself, but has been a wonderful student involved in the UCLC, and probably, as far as I'm concerned, the model for student civic engagement internationally, let's say. So Dati, what's going on with your legislation that you've been working on for a few years now to open up school board elections to 16 and 17-year-olds?
Yeah, I'm actually at the Capitol right now. So it's House Bill 422, and it's sponsored by Representative Jordan Tusher in the House and Todd Weiler in the Senate. And it was sent to House Government Operations, and it's basically an opt-in bill for individual school districts to decide whether or not they'd like to let 16, 17-year-olds vote for local school board races. In Utah has a really low voter pre-registration rate and youth voter turnout rate, especially when compared to other states in the country, so this is super important. But right now it is being held by Representatives Norm Thurston and Corey Malloy in the Government Operations Committee. They won't let it be put on the agenda, which means that there's about 50 students who are lined up and ready to go to come and speak to the committee. There's so many students who have submitted videos and all these things. And this legislation has been worked on and backed by so many student body presidents for over 4 years now. And I really think that the students of Utah deserve the honor and respect of being able to be heard in committee. So if there's anything that, I'm sorry to kind of give you like a quick call to action, but I have until the end of day today, is basically what Representative Malloy said, to get him to put it on the agenda. So if you guys could email Representative Malloy and Representative Thurston or call them would be even better. To get them to put it on the agenda, that would be great.
Okay, yeah, Thurston is an old friend. I didn't realize he was standing in the way, so I'll definitely get in touch with him.
Are there any
Anyone else?
talking points? Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Are there any talking points? I'm sorry, my video's off. My internet's being spotty. Are there any particular reasons that they're giving for keeping it from talking points that we could talk to?
They just said that they didn't like it. And then I think Representative Malloy said that he thought 18 was a sacred year, and it protected the sanctity of voting. But unfortunately, I guess only 16% of 18-year-olds agree because that's how many are turning out. So I think those were his two talking points. But if you don't vote your first election, you're 25% less likely to vote for the rest of your life. If you don't vote in your second election, you're 50% less likely to vote. And by the third election, you're probably never going to vote again. And if you have your first 3 elections when you're in college or switching houses, moving out, getting a job, that's just a really, really bad time to try and create a new habit. So by letting children do this while they're with their families, and it'll get their parents turned out to vote, 30% more likely for parents to vote as well. It's just going to be really important because you're going to take care of those first 2 election races.
Okay, I think we're joined by Lisa Halverson. So I've turned on live transcription. It's, you'll get used to it. It just helps her to be able to follow. All right, fantastic. Welcome, Lisa. Thank you, Dati. And any talking points, anything you want to send for those who have interest, please do.
I'll send it in the chat. I have a talking point sheet. I'll send that right now. Thank you so
Fantastic.
much.
All right, any questions for Dati before we go on?
I was actually curious why because I remember when last year when Rep Briscoe was running it. So I reached out to him and talked to him a little while bit, and then I pitched it to my own high school students. So I know it didn't pass. It didn't do well in the House last year. And I remember watching some of the stuff that Briscoe pointed out, which I thought were rather solid arguments. I was just kind of curious, how come Briscoe isn't the one still running it?
Yeah.
I'm curious why, because I thought Briscoe was a good call and he seemed to have a lot of feeling behind it and experience for why it ought to work.
Yeah, Representative Briscoe is really awesome, and I was thrilled to have the opportunity to work with him. Unfortunately, what happened was I was basically stonewalled by a large proportion of the swing voters in the House who basically said that they were being kind of eviscerated by the Eagle Forum and Natalie Klein because there wasn't a Republican at the head of the bill. And so Representative Briscoe said that he'd be willing to step back, and I'm really grateful for him being able to see farther past himself and really for the future of this bill, because I think as a teacher, he truly values youth and students, and so he's probably trying really hard to get this bill passed, but he's still advising and doing everything, so all his great talking points are probably going to be influencing Representative Tusher.
All right.
Okay, that's kind of what I figured, because it's a super majority and he's not in it.
Yeah.
Trying to get it to work. Okay,
It's
that's
really,
what I figured.
yeah.
So did anyone else want to share anything that they are tracking or concerned about on the Hill? Now's the time. You can raise your hand or just start talking. Okay. All right, so, it looks like some of the legislators are going to be coming on now because they just got off, they're off duty. Okay, that's good. All right, let's go on though. And we're going to kind of turn to Congress for a second, to an issue that we covered a few months back. And how many of you, just raise your hand, have heard of the Civic Secures Democracy Act in Congress? Okay. So it's a major, the most significant piece of legislation strengthening civics education in this country ever. We'll start with that. And I think I'm going to just post a link right now so you have this wonderful toolkit for it if you're interested in that. But to make a long story short, what's so interesting, one of the things that's interesting for us about this piece of legislation is it's kind of very similar in its dynamic to what we're trying to do with Representative Johnson's bill. It sets up a funding for local school districts and states to apply for this money to do innovative things, and it also tracks it sort of assesses students as they go along through these programs, so that there's it's an evidence-based, so that they can stay evidence-based and they can learn from experience. And it's actually really getting traction through Congress. It wants to be what I'm going to call a Noah's Ark bill. And what that means is that they want to have as many R's as D's sponsoring it. And right now, they're woefully out of balance. So that's the bad news. The good news is several members of Utah's congressional delegation are on the gettable list. And high up on that list is Senator Romney, also Representative Blake Moore, and Representative John Curtis. So what I'm going to do, we can talk about it. This is not something that we've taken a position on as the UCLC. But what I would like to know, just with sort of an informal discussion for now, is how do you guys feel about something like this? Is this something that you would want to work on? Say that we could possibly engage Senator Romney, Representative Curtis, and Representative Moore. And I'll just open it up.
Well, I'm brand new, so I'm a little hesitant to say, but I hear really good things about this. I've written letters already. I think it's something that's perhaps going to put civics on par with math and science. As a school teacher, I mean, that's what really gets the attention of districts, of giving resources and just a general feeling of importance, you know. And so I'm hoping that this bill, something like this, would bring civics to the forefront where I feel like it needs to be. So anyway, those are my thoughts.
Yeah, thank you so much, Linda. Would you or anyone else here be interested? I mean, one of the things so Senator Romney, for example, is very interested in it. I know that the Hatch Center is also interested in it, and maybe trying to get more Republican balance onto the slate of co-sponsors. Is anyone interested in having a Zoom meeting with Romney's staff or Blake Moore's staff or John Curtis's staff? Maybe raise your hand if you're interested in that. Okay, I'm going to hold on. So Jen, put your name in the chat. Jen Hinton, who else? Okay, Linda Boyle. Anyone else? Blanche, great. Anyone else want to help with that? And there you go, Alicia, good, Stefan. Okay, so we can offer that. We can try to put that together. And it's related to something else that we're about to talk about. We can also put on a kind of information session about it, if that's helpful. You guys might remember Sean Healy, who's from iCivics, and he's come to one of our meetings before to talk about it. Well, it's really evolved to the point where it has a pay for, it has a source of funding, which was Senator Romney's main concern about it. Anyway, so we'll be in touch about that, and we'll offer that as an opportunity. And then we can see, for those who are interested, about setting up some meetings with some of the members of our congressional delegation. It'd be super helpful.
Judy, would you state the label, the title?
Yes, Civic Secures Democracy Act, CSD for short. And I think I provided a link in there to this sort of toolkit that they created. I've just been really impressed with the way that they've tried to, we've got two hands up. The way that they've really tried to be balanced about sort of the kinds of organizations that are behind it. I think they've really reached out to, groups across the spectrum, which I think is so important in civics education. All right, Glory, you have your hand up.
No, I just had my hand up to support. I would be interested in being, that was my hand for being part of the meeting with the legislators.
Fantastic. Anyone else want to join that? Can put your hand up or put your name in the chat. Stefan, I got that. Okay, great. So we'll work on that. And that'll be something that could be a interesting thing. It's for whoever's interested. All right, good.
Yeah, and Judy, can I just chime in here for a second? That
yes,
in this particular case, as with any legislation, I mean that the important thing that we want you to remember and to reiterate is we are an informal collaborative of people engaged in civics and civic education. And at any point, there may be a piece of legislation that you don't agree with, or you don't, I mean, isn't that the beautiful thing about living in this country? And so that, I just want to reiterate that of course, that if you have a very strong opinion about the federal government's role in education, and you don't support a bill that would encourage federal money going towards civics education, then that's certainly a legitimate viewpoint.
Yep.
You're still welcome to the table that we have here, because we're setting a big table and there's a lot of work for all of us. So I just want to remind us all about that.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. That's super helpful. All right, let's go on if we can. We're starting at something new here. One thing that we're noticing from our work together as we sort of expand this table is that we're noticing. I went into Rob's Roberts area. Okay. We're noticing that you guys have so many different things to offer, right? Teachers who were really trying to engage in this coalition. And so we want to have a regular section of our agenda that's doing a deep dive on like 2 programs per meeting. So Robert, do you want to take it away and lead us on with American Legion?
Yeah, and I did a little preview of the, I have to tell you that the kinds of behind the scenes work that Judy does to get these things put together are pretty amazing. So Judy's talked with Doug and Carrie, with the American Legion, the Boys and Girls State, and also with Catherine with Better Days. And you're gonna see links to the blog posting that she's put together based on the interview that folks have done. And I'm delighted as I was reading through it to see the nice way that especially the piece, Jen with Girls State, and your emphasis on the women's role in politics will bleed beautifully into and connect beautifully with the work that Catherine is doing with Better Days. So delighted to have folks here, Doug and Carrie and Jen from Boys State and Girls State, and I would love to hear more from you about your work. This is a completely unscripted opportunity to hear more from you, and then we'll hear from Catherine Kitterman about Better Days. So Doug and Carrie, do you want to talk about, start with Boys State, and then we'll talk about Girls State?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for putting us in the loop. This civics thing really should be larger than life. This effort is almost un-American in my mind, not to indoctrinate our kids, our friends and family in how to be an American, how citizens are supposed to act and react. We're supposed to mobilize with each other, not against each other. It should be a unifying effort, and I think that's kind of what HB 273 does. And I'll be interested to read the congressional bill. From a political point of view, from the American Legion, I can't just raise my hand and say, "You bet, we're behind you." I have to confer with the higher powers. I need to make sure when I say I represent the American Legion, I really want to represent them. And so, before I came in and said I represent the Legion on 273, I reached out to the people who give good advice and clear-headed thinking, because sometimes I can get emotional about respect. I spent 30 years in the Marine Corps. If you don't respect me, we're going to have a problem here. So I'm excited about this. As I said in the blog, I think one of our biggest challenges going forward is I have to figure out how to ignite that fuse on all the other 7,500 members of the American Legion in Utah. So a school in Blanding can reach out next door, and I don't have to make that trip to talk to them and to brainstorm a little bit about civics and education, how we do it. So I'm excited about that. One of the points I picked up on this, being completely neutral. One of the things I require of all of the counselors that come to Boys State, and we have counselors that are school teachers right now, counselors who are former school teachers, veterans, police officers, first responders, are all volunteer. None of us make a dime in this job. We pay out of our pocket to play in the civics arena. And one of the things some of them have a hard time swallowing is I make them pledge neutrality. We don't have an opinion. We're not congressional or experts on the founding documents. So whatever you think about gun rights, keep it to yourself. Let the kids tell us what they think about it. Let them, there's some smart kids that have some really good opinions. and that kind of qualifies why maybe they should be able to vote in some elections.
Right? Yeah.
In many
I
cases,
imagine.
they're much better connected and well-read than many of the adults I deal with. So I think sometimes we don't give kids enough credit for their talent and their ability, and certainly we can't keep up with their networking system. I mean, they're on fire. So my hat's off to the teachers who every day try to deal with that. But yeah, trying to get the adults in the room to hold their tongue on their opinion of various political figures or initiatives, that's a difficult place to be. But it's absolutely essential to allow the kids, the boys, to explore their thoughts and do it respectfully. So
right.
Yeah, that's what we're all about.
Well, Doug, the vision of simulating the simulation of democratic processes is one of those really strongly researched, strongly effective ways to promote civics. And so Boise State is that vision of simulating that process. And Carrie, do you want to, and or Jen, or both of you want to talk about Girls State as well?
Excuse me, I'm going to start us out. Thank you for having us. And this is the kind of thing, one of the things I remember most from my days as a counselor at Girls State is one of the Girls State citizens in my city saying, "Oh, you mean I don't have to vote or think the same as my parents?" And it's like, yeah, that's right. We're here to teach you to think for yourselves as well as learn how to navigate all these waters in government. And Dati is a perfect example, and I don't know if she's one of our Girls State attendees or not, but you just jump in and you do it, and off you go. So I would like to turn some time over to Jen Hinton. She's our Girls State director. She's very passionate about Girls State, and she's there to make sure that we have a great program.
I just get to be the face of about 100 women working behind the scenes to make this work every year. I wanted to just touch base on what you brought up, Robert, that I feel is the strong point of our program, and that's simulating the democratic process. When these girls come, they're divided up into cities that they organize, and all Girls State and all Boys State across the country have two political parties that they're assigned to. They're either a federalist or a nationalist. And like Doug was saying, they don't have any political ties to anything going on right now, or the Republicans and the Democrats and independents. They get to decide on their platforms. But when they come into this process, we follow the same democratic process. We try to mirror what happens in Utah. And something that I've always been impressed with is because they're hands-on, they elect delegates that attend county caucuses and state caucuses and their city caucuses and move up from there. Every year, several girls that have, why has no one ever taught us about this caucus system that we use? And I think, well, one, teachers are so inundated, and parents themselves do not even understand the caucus system in the state of Utah. And that's just one of the basic things that I think when you are able to simulate a democratic process and have them actually walking through this, and it's not just go to the polls and vote. How do we get people on the ballots? And also, how do we get legislation to the Senate and the House? How do we contact our representatives? And those processes of how that happens. We have school board where they elect school board members and have real, school board members in the state of Utah help with that, and so that they can hold their own school board meetings. But for me, I'm a product of this program years ago, and it has really kept me civically engaged, and I don't miss voting. I mean, that's a religion. Voting's religion. So, but I like to compare, I get a help. I haven't the last couple of years. I know our school district does a reality town for, is it 7th or 8th graders? And they come in and for one day they simulate what real life is and about, you know, spending money and budgeting and stuff. I'd love to see that same type of thing happen in schools with the democratic process of, yeah, how do, and you're not only valued if you run and you win an elected office in the state, that your voice and reaching out to others, I don't know, that your voice is so important. We can't just leave it up to elected officials to do everything. But I know a lot of girls don't feel, and a lot of women don't feel comfortable or choose not to run for an elected office, but you can still have such an impact by realizing how to use your voice and how to have civil dialogue and being involved in your communities. There's so many civic things. I think everyone thinks you can only be involved civically if you're elected to an office, and they get this opportunity, like looking at all of you, so many of you are parts of nonprofit organizations and stuff. This is civic engagement, and that's really important that we teach that as well in our program. You can be engaged. You don't just have to be the mayor of your city. There is lots and lots of places you can be engaged civically. I
love it. And Jen, that's a perfect segue to Catherine. The connections to Better Days and the vision you have. I'd love to hear a little bit about Better Days.
I'm going to give a shout out to them because we've had Better Days come and speak and be involved the last 3 years and the girls are blown away with the history behind women being civically engaged, and that's because of Better Days. So shout out to your program. It's incredible.
Well, thanks, Jen, and thanks, Robert. I'm excited to just share a couple things about Better Days work. So for those of you who haven't heard of us before, we're a nonprofit. We've been in existence since 2016, and our mission is to share Utah women's history. We focused a lot on suffrage leading up to the big year of 2020 that wasn't, but we're still going strong and using examples of women's civic engagement in our past to help students learn about becoming, change makers in their communities in the future. One thing I think that's really important to note here is that it's really important for both boys and girls and men and women to see women in our past as leaders and to have those role models in our own local communities who have made change, especially with the suffrage story, which is a kind of a rah, rah, go Utah story in some ways, where women voted first here back in 1870. It's cool to know that there are people in your own local community who made that happen, or who paraded for the 19th Amendment, or who ran for office and changed the world, or brought basketball to Utah, whatever it was, right? There's a lot of different ways to make a difference. And we think that students can learn about that through the stories of women in Utah's past. So I'm going to put a few links in the chat after I'm through here. And I know that Judy has those on the, in her materials as well. But one of our big initiatives this year is to support the Martha Hughes Cannon statue that will be hopefully going to Washington, D.C. later this year. That depends on when the U.S. Capitol opens up finally for public events again. But we're making sure that we gave Martha a proper send-off. So we have free teacher educator toolkits, as well as community toolkits and a traveling exhibit that will start going around the state in March. In fact, Girls State is hosting it. We'd love to see it go to Boys State too. I'll just put that out there. So I'm going to put those links in the chat so that if you have teachers that you know, or if you're interested in hosting an event yourself, or in just using materials, you can just put your information in on that form and we'll send you the digital toolkit. We also have a lot of other materials that we've created over the years. So we have, for example, illustrated trading cards of women in Utah history that I think are really a fun way to engage, and other things like that.
Make great gifts.
They do. So one thing that we'll say, oh gosh, I was going to say something else about our exhibit and I just spaced it. Oh, the lesson plans and things that we have that help teachers engage their students with Martha Hughes Cannon, or that you can use in activities for different youth groups or things like this, are also focused on civic engagement and the process of lawmaking. So we're especially focusing on that and women shaping Utah's early statehood years. So the lessons that are focused on Martha this year are things like how a bill becomes a law, and using examples of her work to found Utah's State Board of Health, that kind of thing, as well as a National Statuary Hall, then the process of legislation in the Utah State Legislature that you go through to change out the statues, using Martha's statue as an example of that. So we think it's timely and relevant. We'd love to see more folks post and use our materials. So I'll just put the links in the chat and my email as well. I'm going to have to jump off in a few minutes for a schedule conflict, but if you have any questions, we'd love to chat and share resources.
Well, Catherine and Jen and Carrie and Doug, I just want to thank you all. I feel like I hope the wheels are starting to turn amongst all of us about the kinds of ways we can interact and collaborate and think about how do we capitalize on all the good work that you're doing. So thank you so much for being with us. All right, Judy, take it away.
So we have big news and probably, hopefully, bigger news this Friday. But we were invited to apply for funding through the CivXNow Network, or it's actually mostly managed by iCivics, which some of you may be familiar with. And we put in a full application, and I want to thank Alicia Tucker and the Utah 3Rs Project for being the fiscal conduit for that, fiscal sponsor for that application, because the UCLC is very, deliberately informal. And we didn't want to form a nonprofit. Are you kidding? No way. But there's all these wonderful nonprofits sitting right here. So we did that with Alicia, and we wrote a proposal that's really building on all the amazing, excellent ideas that you guys have had since we've been meeting, frankly, and really trying to crystallize all of those into a much more robust program, which, the timing hopefully could be right if HB, for example, if HB 273 passes, and we'll certainly have our work cut out for us. And if we're really going to go to town and really try to address all of the needs that have come up in the listening tour and on, we really do need to beef up what we're doing. I'm doing this on a very, very, very part-time basis, and mostly as a volunteer, as a labor of love. And so we need to get more resources into this work. It's worth it. It's important. We're going to know about, and what I did was I posted a link in the agenda, but I'll post it here also, to attachment D, which we'd love for you guys to take a look at. But basically, it's a summary of kind of the main priorities that we said that we wanted them to fund. And then I also want to give a huge shout out to Utah Valley University, Scott Paul. You really worked hard to get us some matching funds that we could articulate with the grant proposal. Thank you. I know that if we get the grant, and either way, it's a big deal for us, and it's very meaningful because it's you guys that are doing that. Also want a big shout out to the League of Women Voters for getting us a match that we could articulate, and that's also very meaningful. And Utah Law Related Education also came up with a match for us. We put out the call, and you heard us, and you came through, and yeah, we're feeling pretty good about it. I'll let you know in 2 days how it comes out. I know that we will find out. Anyway, so that's in the works. Crossing fingers and toes. Any questions about that funding request through iCivics and CivXNow? Okay, all right, let's go on. Very, very related to that is we decided that it made sense to affiliate with the CivXNow Network. That was, so there are coalitions or collaboratives like this all over the country, right? This seems to be a heyday for really, digging deep on civics education, and not a moment too soon. So the beauty is in affiliating with the CivXNow Network of our counterparts all over the country is that we can compare notes and learn from each other. We're all doing different things. So just for example, I'm going to give you just a taste of what we're getting. I'm going to share my screen really quick. I'm going to share. Oh, just on the agenda. Okay, it's on the agenda, but we'll do this. Can you see what I see? Can you see 60 of the bills aligned? Okay, yeah. So the beauty of being involved with this CivXNow Network is that, you know, we're going to be talking to all these states. Here you can see a spot of good news. Utah is really considered kind of a leader right now because of the really robust pieces of legislation that we have going and that are still alive. So you can see how we figure there on the map. And so that's great. And so we can really keep track of that. We don't have to go and do all that digging ourselves. So one of the things that being part of the network will make it easier for us to do is if for those of us who do want to, no, let me stop sharing. Okay. It's much nicer to see all of your faces. For those of you who do want to help with the Civic Secures Democracy Act, that's the group that's leading it, and they can scaffold every step of the way and really be the ears to the ground on, you know, what kind of feedback we're getting, for example, from Senator Romney and Representative Curtis and Representative Moore. So let me stop there. And Alicia, do you want to add anything, or Robert, about any of these new developments?
I would just thank Alicia for stepping up and all the folks who've stepped up to help, you know, as we kind of, you know, there's no blueprint for this work. There's no, I mean, the contingency of trying to do this kind of collaborative work is the same kind of contingency that anybody faces when they're trying some new things. And it fits and starts and opportunities for some people to step out and lead the way, and other times to kind of regroup and collaborate. And I just really appreciate Judy's leadership on this and Alicia stepping up as well. So thanks, because it's one more thing to add to your plates to try to make this happen. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited. And when do we find out? I thought it was the end of February.
But it's going to be Friday.
Oh, Friday.
Yeah. And Sean already told me that he's going to be calling me. Sean from iCivics. He's kind of our guy. So I don't know if that's good or bad, but he's been very friendly.
Great.
So,
well, usually people like to call with a yes and email with a no. So I think that's a good sign.
Yeah. So hopefully, I mean, you know, these efforts really deserve a lot more resources. We really want to match the interests that we're seeing all over. And especially in the listening tours from teachers and social studies leaders and principals, that they do want to go deeper on civic teaching and learning. And they want
That's a beautiful segue, Judy, into listening tours.
That was on purpose. But before we make our segue and kind of wrap up, does anyone have any questions about that network or that funding request or anything like that?
Question.
Yeah, Michelle.
Do they only measure progress by legislation? Because that is one of the things I've noticed in the Media Literacy Now network, that if we only measure by legislation, we're missing so much on the ground that's happening in these kinds of collaboratives. And so if and as you have opportunities to bring that up, I'm trying to influence Media Literacy Now in that regard. But right here, we have measurable, you know, the number of organizations involved in the variety, and there are different ways we get what we measure. And if we're only measuring legislation, we're missing a lot of what's happening.
So no, they don't just look at legislation or, you know, legislative progress. They look at the strength and diversity of the coalition, right? Like one of the things that we had to present with our proposal was a spreadsheet that I worked on for days about who we're trying to recruit. So that we can make this table bigger. You know, this is not, I love who's here, but we're not the most diverse lot. And, you know, for these issues, there's an argument to really try to reflect more of the diversity, the, you know, significant emerging diversity in our state. So that's one thing that's really important to them. a bunch of things. They are not, they understand that every state is in a different place in terms of its readiness for legislation. And for some states, legislation is not even where the action is at all. And that's legitimate. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I know that they are also very dedicated to media literacy and digital wellness. So we should talk. Maybe I'll get in touch with all of you guys somehow on Friday when we know, but we're excited. Okay. So just quickly updating on the listening tours. I said I'd let you guys go at, I think at 4:45, so just a couple more minutes. The listening tours we're kind of at a midway point. We've done 6 school districts, and it's just been so eye-opening what we're doing.
It's so great. It's
Hearing.
so great.
They're really, maybe some of you want to come and listen in on some of them. That might be kind of nice. We're learning so much, but the bottom line, the main thing we're learning is that interest in going deep on civic teaching and learning is just at an all-time high, but that the teachers and the schools need resources and professional development to take those next steps. So we're going to be summarizing. We're also reaching out to more school districts. We would like to cover 13 school districts in all, and then we're going to do a whole bunch of them with charter schools who are doing some really interesting things. And Stefan and Alicia, Stefan, do you want to just say a couple words about what we're doing this Saturday?
Yeah, Judy and Alicia have been kind enough to meet with the Utah Teacher Fellows, because we have a teacher network that covers from Ogden School District all the way down to San Juan School District and on the Navajo Nation. So Judy and Alicia are actually going to meet with my organization to talk about the UCLC, to talk about the 3 Rs, and then work with my engagement team to try and facilitate these listening tours, especially in harder to reach areas like San Juan and also with charter schools. And so, yeah, we're going to make use of the Teacher Fellows Network to help UCLC with their listening tours and 3 Rs.
Wonderful. See, that's what this is all about, is just finding different ways to collaborate. There's, and Stefan and Alicia have been wonderful. But if any of you are interested in listening in on any of the listening tours, since it is a UCLC undertaking, please get in touch with me. They are truly, it's really given me more hope than just about anything I've done so far with the UCLC.
And just know, one of the things that's cool about the listening tours, we're having Zoom conversations, which has been great. And we're getting some real wonderful ideas from teachers. And we're also collecting a lot of names of really low-hanging fruit, meaning teachers out there who are going to be interested in the kinds of programs that you all have. And so I think there's going to be a real nice synergistic opportunity coming from the listening tours for all of your organizations.
And so do we have any questions about the listening tours or any other announcements that people want to share? I saw that Marilyn had something that they're doing. She's doing a video contest. Do you want to say more about that?
Well, we've decided to offer some cash prizes to students who might make an under a minute video that could be viewed on YouTube or TikTok or something like that, about students being participants in democracy, particularly because we support voting and all the civic participation. So unfortunately, I have misplaced my documents that we've just recently developed on parent permission forms, what the contest is about. Our committee of 4 will present to our board next Wednesday to get approval, and then we can put out advertisements and requests for students, high school students, we're thinking, in particularly media. I don't know that social studies classes have interest in it, but if little groups of students got together on their own, that's what it would be, maybe 4 or 5 of them creating a video that
wonderful
enter in our contest. So more about this later, but it has to go through our board.
This could be
Great.
so great because I noticed that the young people today are kind of born knowing how to edit videos. Have you guys noticed that?
Yes.
So that's cool, really timely. And Julie Maddox from Freedom Festival, tell us what you've got going on.
Okay, so this is a great time. The students still have 6 days if they want to participate in the contest. It's the theme is First Amendment, so that's pretty appropriate for civics. And the essay and art contest is due February 28th, but the speech contest is due on March 26th. So you can go to freedomfestival.org/contest and find out about that. And we also have a contest for teachers who are civically minded and engaged. So we would just love to share that with anybody who's interested. And I'll try and contact some of the people from this meeting, from this group.
Yeah,
Great.
get
And
us all that. And let's do a blog spotlight on that, you know, as soon as we can. Yeah.
Yep, Julie, if you send either Judy or me an email, we can blast that out to everybody here.
Okay, I will send that today.
Wonderful, thanks.
Anyone
right,
else have any announcements or anything you want shared or spotlighted? Spotlit?
Question.
Yes.
Is it possible to get a list and contact information for everyone in this group?
Yes, and let me just say right now, this is my my age is showing. We need ways. I'm going to be sharing we're going to ask you guys to fill out some information about what you're comfortable circulating, and then we're just going to share a contact list, which will just be a fancy Google sheet, so you guys can have that. Definitely, but people are going to need to opt in to that. So watch for that. You'll have that. If there's anyone who we also would like to create an appropriate social media channel, whether it's a closed Facebook group or open Facebook group or Instagram or Twitter or more than one, we need that too, so that we can have more multi-directional communication. Anyone interested in helping this older lady with setting up some social media?
Or do we want to avoid social media, right, Michelle? Right?
Well,
I mean, it's not the easiest thing to get used to, but I run a community forum that provides a lot more, you know, if you're on Facebook, it's the most current content that is there, and it's really hard to stay truly connected on social media tools because they're driven by activity. If you have something more static like a forum, then you can create categories, and the conversations become more accessible, even though the tool is not as fun and shiny.
So can you help us do this?
I'd be willing to teach you what I've learned.
Okay. Yeah, let's
great.
figure something out. We might just test some things.
Yeah.
You know, I noticed that there's a lot of visual stuff going on, so maybe we want to try Instagram and your forum, you know, something like that. I think we do need to, you know, give that a whirl. And especially if we want to engage more young people, you know, we would avoid Facebook. Apparently Facebook is not cool, you know, and we would do something like Instagram. So yeah, we'll figure this out. Robert, you want to fare thee well and send us
I
off?
will fare thee well. Thanks for staying longer than we'd planned. And I just want to thank you again for all the great work you're doing. You know, it's very exciting, the possibilities that we have facing us, and we're really delighted with all the work that you're doing already. I think that it's just really exciting to see the possible connections. So we will keep in touch, and we will send out, you know, anytime we get this open loop of information and conversation as we move forward. So thanks for all you do. Keep us in your thoughts as the legislative session moves ahead, and cross your fingers for some good appropriations, and we'll make things happen no matter what. So thank you so much.
And we will share this meeting and the chat and everything as soon as possible. All right. Thank you. Everyone, take good care. Okay. Bye-bye.